first, I would like to thank Mr. Manoj for being here today with us. And I welcome all of you to our second session of Auto Ancillary Conclave. First was with Mr. Arvind Goyal. Please be on mute, everyone. I request to be on mute. Yeah, so first was with the MD of Tata Autocomp, Mr. Arvind Goyal. And before I start, I would like to thank Sangeeta Mehta, our member, for reaching out to Mr. Manoj and contributing to the success of this Auto Ancillary Conclave. We have chosen the extremely promising auto ancillary sector as our theme, and today's event promises to be an exhilarating one with one of the top players in this sector joining us today. Our guest of honor today is a perfect blend of tradition and modernization. He has upheld the legacy of his father by focusing on the core values of the organization while leveraging technology to stay competitive. He's a firm believer in the mantra transform or perish. Please put your hands together for Mr. Utkarsh Munot, MD of ZF Steering Gear India. And before we proceed further, I would like to say a few words about our esteemed organization, Millennium MAMS, and its founders. Our 30-year-old organization has geared up to the need of economic independence of women through financial literacy. Our mentors, Mr. Bishnu Dhanuka and Mr. Sanjay Bhuvania, have leveraged their knowledge to create more than 5,000 investment savvy MAMs. Thank you, sirs. And now, a little bit more about ZF Steering Gear and Mr. Manoj. Like any other organization worth their salt, Mr. Manoj also was not handed the position of MD of ZF Steering Gear on a platter. He had to start at the shop floor, much like the great Ratan Tata of the Tata Group. The engineer with a management degree from Northeastern University, Boston, he proved his mettle and used technology and innovation as the platform to restructure ZF Steering Gear into a leaner and fitter organization. He infused young blood into the company for this transformation exercise. The results were exemplary, with a second plant at Pithampur, innovations like truck in a box or bus in a box, where to provide customer-centric solutions. Let us learn more about the core values of this auto ancillary major and what plans Mr. Manoj has up his sleeve for the company. Over to you, Mr. Manoj.
Thank you, Rachna. Thank you for having me here. You've spoken a lot. I don't know if I'll be able to prove whatever you've been able to say here, but if you can share the screen, let me just drive straight into the presentation and get over with the difficult part for me, and then we'll go on to the lighter note.
Sure.
So, like we always say, we are not a very traditional organization as so to say. We are an old organization, but we have certain core values set, which for some industries may prove negative on the path of growth. We always say within India, opportunity very rarely comes onto your door. And we, in the auto component sector, because we are not married to any Japanese industry or a German or a US industry, we have to create our own path, our own opportunity. And hence we first at our mantra site mentioned to everyone to say, if opportunity does not knock on your door, build a door for yourself so that people have to knock on it to come to you to build the future up. I'm going to go on to the next slide. I think your data is not loading up, Rachna, but because half the half the slides are missing in this because the data has not loaded up. Anyways, I'll just push it through as a readout. When we say future of the auto ancillary in India post-COVID, it's a very difficult task to put down your thoughts because we really don't know where the industry is heading, either the OEM market or the auto component, or what is our scope for export. We may say that China has anti-sentiments and anti-favorable issues and all of that, but how well are we geared up to prepare to swing into action to make use of that opportunity is a question mark. So when we say the auto ancillary sector in India, I would really say we are mainly focused domestically, and the auto ancillary industry is very heavily dependent on the automobile industry in India, within India. The component manufacturers, we as a whole, we contribute to about 2.3 or 2.4% of India's total GDP. We employ about 1.5 million people direct. I'm not talking about the contractor or the indirect labor of anything of that sort. And the total turnover on the auto component side within India is about 1.7 lakh crore rupees. If you look at the figure, what KPMG and the top four, so to say, always have been presented, and they've been somewhat wrong or missing out. The export of auto components grew to about 2.7% in 1920, but that was also mainly because of the pandemic pushing in, and the low segment rise because of the transformation from BS4 to BS6, the platforms. And this was a chicken egg story led between the OEMs and the government, and we were third party as the real tip of the iceberg who got affected within this battle of the Brunies, as you call it, between OEMs and the government. The scale is fairly in its favor when we look at the strides and when we look at it from the growth perspective, but it's fairly small as compared to what China or Brazil or the Netherlands and all those people talk about. When we talk about the trend shift in the commercial vehicles, I don't know how many of you realize it, but there has been a serious change of shift within the commercial vehicle segment. I talk about commercial vehicle passionately because we are primarily married to the commercial vehicle segment in India. The previous sector was the intermediate commercial vehicle, which is the 6-tonner or 7-tonner segment. And then the light commercial vehicle, which is between 3-tonner to 6-tonner. And it was sooner getting converted to the medium heavy commercial vehicle segment. We must really thank the government as they focused on the infrastructure segment, which led to a rise, a very good steady rise in the road infrastructure, which translated at the end to the tipper segment. Gadkari government and always other government bodies always promised us to say we will make about 40 kilometers or 41 kilometers per day. And when they made the statement, they were actually making only about 12 kilometers per day. Whereas actually last year during the pandemic, they have been able to achieve 32 kilometers per day of actual road construction in and around different parts of the country, whether you call the Golden Quadrilateral or the Delhi-Mumbai corridor, which is called as the financial corridor. And there are also another project which the government has taken up to link the railway and the waterways to the road transport, which is providing not only one hub like the Adani port or the JNPT terminus, but a series of different terminals are coming up by the road transport and complementing each other by terms of dispatching vehicles through the railway route. So this is one major activity which has really come up in the tipper segment of the commercial vehicle. There is also an increasing trend in the mining activity, which had earlier stopped. I think I would really blame it to be a gameplay between the Congress and the BJP government. I'm sorry if there is anyone from the political party, but no offense. This was a shift in the political scenario. And if you see, every 5 years, India is pulled back a year whatever policies has progressed goes back reverse to then set their own bureaucrats in the system and then roll out those schemes out. The bus segment is a drastic fall. I think it's also because since there are online classes and every year there are about a couple thousand small end buses that come into play. For the school bus segment that we call it, it's called the yellow elephant in our, so to say, segment. There is no demand for the school bus. Also, public transport is not quite preferred because of the pandemic, the infections, and only 50% buses are to be loaded. Now, real question or thinker is, even if a bus had 50 seats, we all know a bus is overcrowded to about 170 odd people, by people sitting on laps, the people standing, crushing into the buses, everything. So I always feel that the bus segment in India, because the bus is built predominantly on a truck chassis. And why not truck chassis? Because it can take more load. Because we in India never follow the norms. We always want to overburden ourselves. We always overload the trucks or the buses, everything. So we are well equipped, but it may not work in the long term. Even if it's a 52-seater bus, you can only occupy about 26 or 25 seats at the max, given the pandemic. But there is also a new segment, and which I think I would thank a part of the women population for this new segment to come up, which is Amazon. So everything right from home grocery to this, is not that women have cut down on the shopping. It's just another way that we as men don't know from where the goods are coming into the house. Pehle samajh jata tha to say it's coming through the staff, but now it's coming through Amazon. And what's in the box, only God knows, or the person who's ordered it really knows about it. So this has given the birth to the small commercial vehicle segment we call, which was earlier the 1-tonner, has now migrated from the 1-tonner right up to 3.5 tons, which we call as the Tata Motors Ace or the Dost or the other segments in the market that we call it. So this is all the e-commerce platforms that we see are coming up on a very, very good note. And there is a high demand for such vehicles, and there is a wait list now. The trends which are also impacting the automotive sector, which is post-COVID, as we see it, we have we in India, within our OEMs, try and map our risk mitigates analysis that all the OEMs do. How much we put it into force is a question mark, but we still want to calculate for it. For the automotive industry as a whole, which is, I think, already under a big shadow because of the sales slowdown in 2019, as I mentioned, the migration from BS4 to BS6. And further to add to our worries is COVID-19, which is a really, really difficult phase for us. There is a lot of fluctuation in the asking rate for the supply chains. This I would not blame either the government or the OEMs, but this is, in my view, a new scenario change that we are seeing in India. The end customer is getting cleverer by the day. He or she wants the best at the same prices, which is typical India. But since the end customer knows what he or she wants, the demand for asking for the right components and the frequent changes in the schedules are happening only because of the fluctuation in the minds of the end customer at the dealer end. Dealer for us is the real buyer and not the actual owner. And why I say that is, in India, if you look at our market of the bus and the truck, the driver is not really the owner of the vehicle. Whereas everywhere else, whether Europe or Japan or US, the driver is actually the owner. So if any part was to go wrong, they would fix the part. But in India, we must admit that part is about 12,000 or 20,000 rupees. It's easier to change the driver who complains about the part than to change the part. So if there is a new driver who knows that the previous fellow has been chucked out for complaining about an X part, trust me, there is no complaint related to that part ever, because he knows he's going to lose his job. So these all have been impacting us over the years, which are changing quite rapidly, I must say. Thanks to the e-portal or the e-seva that the government has put in, you are not able to do any transshipment anymore. It has to be an end-to-end delivery that we are talking about. It has also, I would caption it as reshaped people's relationship with the mobility. People are more careful with what they are using, what they want to use. I think earlier in the olden days, it was fairly easy that you had only a Fiat or a Contessa or an Ambassador to choose from, and there were no variants. You would ask for a variant and you would get a very dirty answer from the dealership. Today, you are able to choose any vehicle out of the 372 odd variants you have in the passenger car segment, but there are still about 169 to 176 odd variants in the commercial vehicle industry. And if they were only about 4, it would be easy, but all the OEMs are moving towards something called as the MBP program, which is modular bus program, which means the chassis body remains the same, but the variants change depending on the load, the front axle weight, and what are the end requirements of the customer, whether they want the driver and the cleaner both to have bunk beds within the cab, or they want a short distance truck mobility, which does not require a resting area. This has really made or shaped the Indian automotive industry for larger numbers, and also is gaining high popularity for the OEMs in terms of export market, which is the world over scenario. And we are able to deliver how many ever numbers the customer asks us over a fortnight, which is not the same case in the international markets. There we need to plan in very well with the SAP data, and we work only with systems. India is moving towards that, but it's still quite a long way from there. We have also paved way for a new growth market, which is called the aftermarket. Why I would say we have paved way is not that the spare part market or the aftermarket is not there. It was there, but it was an unorganized sector. It was the spurious sector. But with the end user becoming more and more demanding, and the need or the eye for quality going up, it's better to use a part from the OEM at maybe double the price or 20% increase as compared to the unorganized sector. And the unorganized sector mainly is contributed in India about 70% from China. And the availability of parts from China, we all know it's nightmare now. And I don't think that will ease out anytime soon. Coming to global trends, and I've put up this slide because we all talk about what's happening all over the world and how India is benefiting or impacted and all of that. I have 5 major points, and then I'll probably expand a little more on it. Number 1, I would say, is the global supply chain disruption. Companies are increasingly facing complex supply chain issues because we are interdependent within our phases, maybe on the semiconductor challenge or the US-China relationship. The US-China relationship led to about a 13% drop in Chinese export, which is a huge number. And the total number of goods which India imports as auto components is to the tune of about $17 billion, out of which China accounts for about 26%, which comes up to $4.5 billion, which is a huge growth. If you add the 4.5 billion to the Indian economy in terms of auto components, that's a 5-year horizon for us right there. Just on our aftermarket. I'm not talking about the core OEM, but this is the aftermarket, what I'm looking at. The demand of vehicles has slowed down all through the globe. But at the same time, it's a little muted outlook for India in the current fiscal year, uh, because of the challenges we face on account of the last mile delivery on e-commerce platforms, the down trading and reverse migration to drive recovery in the small format mobility. It's a challenge. There are very few players addressing this market. When we see major transport companies and logistics hubs, they are there in the larger scale products, and this market is still too mature. And I think it will take another year or so for the small format mobility, as we call it, to nurture within the country. There is a shift in the mobility trend shaping to a new transport mix. And this is very important because we in the auto component sector have three different product mixes relating to commercial vehicle. If I talk within the commercial vehicle, we have four, which is the heavy commercial vehicle, medium commercial vehicle, intermediate commercial vehicle, and the light commercial vehicle, which comprises a niche segment for the small commercial vehicle as well. In passenger, we used to have one, which is the sedan, but now the sedan is the sports activity vehicle, like the Kia Seltos or the MG. Then you have the SUV, the sports utility vehicle, and now you have the upper trend, which is the electric vehicle, which is an electric trend, which is very soon and fast picking up. If I'm not wrong, Niti Aayog is talking with RERA to make it as a compulsion that every housing societies of 1,000 plus people should have 2 charging points every society. And if that is to kick in, which means India, a country as complex as India, if they put up a charging point, whether the power supply to that charging point is going to be constant, and if that happens, who is going to bear the electricity cost of the charging stations if you stay in a society? Is the municipality going to pay for it, or is it going to be the housing societies? And if it's housing societies, if I don't have an electric vehicle, why would I pay for the bills of someone else? There is no community service as we know in India. So these are going to be all major transport mix complications which are soon going to come up. The next normal globally could have a new transport mix. Micromobility could gain popularity with shared or public transport, which is now seen as unsafe. Something as, what do you say, Uber Go or shared Uber, all those platforms will kick in, but with 50% transport mix as well. As I mentioned on aftermarket, there is a pretty resilient aftermarket. There are mobility restrictions where the vehicles would have traveled lesser miles and people want to spend less. So there is going to be a different focus on aftermarket from the OEM. So if I go to a second annexure point of this, at the same time, people will also try to repair the vehicles instead of replacing them, other than the 15-year-old scrappage policy vehicles. So the need to serve in the aftermarket will definitely increase, but which also will face a huge amount of challenge for us in the industry, where the aftermarket has labor which is unskilled, but hardworking, and they have something out of the box thinking, which we always call, sorry, pardon my language, but Kida Dimag. So they will try to repair the vehicles with their own might and old technology as they want to. They'll probably use different tools and not the industry tools. But with these people going out of circulation, we will have a serious problem in terms of labor even more. The scope for greater auto investment and deal activity. We've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, the merger and acquisition investment in India have increased multifolds. With the investment in automotive sector shooting up, And during the last economic downturn, similar trend was observed also in 2021, where several players have really gone in deep for the mergers and acquisitions, and they have taken over the smaller groups and made them more organized as a part of the supply chain as a whole. So when I think about all the negatives that I've spoken till now, what could be the future actions to face the new normal? I'm calling it the new normal because I was not able to figure out how well to put this up. The auto suppliers, in my opinion, should prioritize on the following points in this new landscape, so to say. One is get over from this mega saga of China and try and focus on your own business, to say localize to grow. You cannot keep depending on what the world has to offer, whether technology or whether this. You can reinvent and make your own technology. I do not think in India we lack any drive on either design or validation or manufacturing or even the testing norms for that matter. So we must localize the 4.5 billion revenue that China has been able to get back into our fold and increase that to become even more. And this is possible within the next 1 or 2 years itself. Many of us are already working on those segments. And I think we should be able to see a strong collaboration between us, the OEM, and the industry government bodies, so to say. We should definitely collaborate and step in to gather the agencies. When I say collaborate, is not collaboration as we call it within the world phenomena, but technology collaboration as a technical know-how in case you are lacking on the technology front. You need to optimize within your organization to become more competitive. And first and foremost, we all talk that we must become positive-minded animals, which we say enable a winning mindset. You must be prepared to make millions and billions of parts, because if you don't, someone else will. Get the additional process from the OEM included in the scope, which is an end-to-end solution. If I'm supplying, for an example, a steering gear, and there are male and female parts attached to the steering gear, I should be in a position to go to the OEM, win the confidence and say, what if I am able to reduce your supplier base and provide you a solution right from the wheels to the end of the tires? And that is exactly what is the meaning for TIB and BIB, which is truck in a box and bus in a box. I am also making myself vulnerable enough to the OEM. In India, there's a very famous word which we all like, which is called nuisance value. So I am working towards being a nuisance value to the OEMs. And if I am able to do that, then I am a wanted character within the supplier list of the OEMs, which does not mean that I want to cause any trouble, but which means that I am trying to secure my future and lay the path for growth on my own with the OEM, with the same customers. And lastly, I would say we should definitely emphasize on technology and R&D and not the low cost segment, so to say. I'm going on to each point now, which is when I say localize to grow, is actually what is, if I say the next words, you'll resonate with what I'm saying is make in India, because we all are almost Modi bhakts and we always remember what he says. So make in India is very, it's a very fancy word, but I don't know if you all have heard Rajiv Bajaj in his past interviews. And he says it's not supposed to be called make in India. It actually means mad in India. Because if you try to make in India, the way the market tosses you around, by the time you actually develop and launch the product, you've actually lost your mind out. The essence of this make in India or mad in India both resonate the same. Ironically, but it says or it captures in a way to say capture the import substitution opportunity, which is either China or the Korean steel market or the Indonesian imports into the country, the FTA with Thailand. There are a number of factors. These are only a few things that I could think of which relates to my industry. We can definitely achieve a 3x increase in the exports. We can pursue higher exports with a competitive edge in categories like shafts, bearings, and fasteners. The reason I'm mentioning these three, these are generic items for the entire automotive industry, not only to the component industry. And these are required in billions, not even millions. And if you ask me about bearings, there must be about 100 bearing suppliers, but only 10 are entertained in the OEM segment per se. Question is why the 90 are not making themselves available to the OEMs and coming forward with new technology and cutting edge processes like they are father figures in the bearing industry. Why give China or Korea or Indonesia an opportunity to get in? We both will fight and the third player gets the advantage to come in. So I always say, let's collaborate with our competitor and then join in. At the same time, I would mention there are tons of opportunities for import substitution in categories like engine electricals, HVAC, engine fuel systems, exhaust parts, even semiconductors or chips for that matter. Unofficially, unquote me on this, is I think 6 players within the Indian gamut market have already started production for the chip shortage. And I think over the next 3 to 4 months, we should be out of the chip shortage. But the real think tank is once we are out of the chip shortage, what is going to be the new shortage? Because we are not a well-oiled machine, something or the other is definitely going to pop up. So when I say collaborate and step in to create those agencies, it's the auto component suppliers seek growth through collaborations that help them deepen and say the aftermarket presence and also address the demand for overlapping products in adjacent markets. Now, if I have a plastic engineering product where I'm supplying say fuel tanks or blow molded tanks to a commercial vehicle or passenger car segment, why can I not think out of the box and utilize my capacity for the white goods industry? Every washing machine has a rotor set fan. It's all plastic. If I am able to use my capacity for that market, I am able to get a fixed cost, maybe far lower than the automotive, but the volumes are fairly high and you get a fixed overhead calculated market.
Sorry, sir. Sir, if we can have 25 minutes for Q&A in 2 minutes. Okay. If we can start Q&A in 2 minutes.
Sure. I'm done with the last slide.
Yes.
So we always focus within ZF India at the micro market level, and that's our mantra for growing up. We don't look majorly at state or city levels. And we say the 43% of the overall demand of the aftermarket comes from urban. The reason I've written that is that means 57% comes from rural. That's where we usually focus on. We kind of minimize our costs every time and we focus a lot more on deeper segments. We have a winning mindset. So success also lies in the mindset, as I mentioned earlier, to optimize your cost and to make more numbers, make digital analytics and automation a way of working, something that China does very well, which is called Industry 4.0. In India, it's unfortunately, we call it a Jugaad 4.0. But we are migrating and we are going towards that new, whatever works, works. We don't really have to call it Industry 4.0. But we have to develop a mindset to produce in mass volumes. For that, maybe an Industry 4.0 platform may be needed to in the longer run, which we see as an increasing trend coming up. Last not the least, what should be our target for all of us within the industry? And this is what we do. Year on year, whether the OEM asks us or not to reduce the cost, global OEMs ask us for a reduction of about 5 to 7% on our price year on year. And how do we do that with the increase of raw materials coming up our way every year? We keep reinventing our own products. We do our product design in-house, and we say a 10 to 30% drop in design engineering cost in about 12 months. And we have this cycle going on for the last 13 odd years. The procurement on the material cost reduction, RM, manufacturing and supply chain, we get our machines capable to a way where we make our own machines and reduce the machine cycle time to by about 20 to 40%, which lowers the inventory on a whole. And the maintenance of the machines has to be top notch, which is 30 to 50% of the less machine downtime value. And I mentioned earlier, sales and aftermarket is about 2 to 3x, 3 times the improvement factor. Last not the least, a very important slide, and I end my boring presentation, sorry, is don't wait for the right opportunity, because really one needs to create it. There is no opportunity which is going to be knocking at your door. One needs to put a step forward to create it, please. Cool, I'm done with this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Manoj. Thank you for the invaluable insights into the global trends impacting the automotive sector in light of COVID-19 and also post-COVID-19. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And with your permission, I would like to start the Q&A. First question is from Aarti. Aarti, you can come in.
Good evening, sir. This is Aarti from Indonesia. I want to know, what is your current sales mix across the CV spectrum? And also, like you mentioned, what is
I couldn't hear you well.
What is your current sales mix across the CV spectrum? And also, sir, like you mentioned that you're actually married to the CV segment. So what are your growth plans for the PV segment?
So let me be a little candid out here. In terms of the CV spectrum, our product mix that is about 70% in the medium and heavy commercial vehicle space. We contribute to about 92% of the tipper market in India. Within that, the light commercial vehicle stands at about 20%. And there is a new entrant, as I mentioned, the small commercial vehicle, which is a product mix for us at about 10%. The SCV also includes a new segment within the Indian gamut market, is the power steering for tractor. We've been able to crack a power steering for the tractor segment, which is not hydrostatic, but a hydraulic power assisted steering, which is 1/4 the cost of a hydrostatic system. It should work at the end of the day, and that's what it does. Because we feel that a farmer's son or a daughter is not going to be interested to put pressure on the steering wheel. He wants a mobile in one hand and listening to or chatting to or gossiping to his friends, while the other one, if the less interested job he does is maneuvering the field. So we wanted to provide him the same comfort as a commercial vehicle, which is power steerings. Coming to the passenger car segment, I have personally burnt my fingers twice. And this was a thin line between me and my father, where I came in fresh from college and I said, why can't we do something different? And why does the son have to follow exactly what the father has been doing over the last couple of years? That Josh resulted in a negative impact for me. And I learned a lesson the hard way, as all of us do. But nonetheless, since I have taken over from my father and I was waiting for that, I'm going to re-enter the passenger vehicle segment now, because now I know that I can get away with a little hide and seek rally from him. So we will, you will see and hear from the market pretty soon about our entry into the passenger car segment.
Wow.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Namita, for your question.
So my question is a takeoff from what Aarti had asked. I just wanted to understand your thoughts on the transition from mechanical steering to power steering. I mean, going forward, you've already talked about the tractor segment, but how do you actually expect this to shape up? And the second one is a little bit more specific to your company. I just wanted to understand in this in this current scenario, what would be your current capacity utilization?
So I'll answer the easier one first, which is on the capacity utilization. So we were a little ahead, and we always say, or my father always says, that when the industry is at a negative trend, we must invest at that time, because the machine manufacturers will love us at that moment where we are keeping their shops running. So we always over-invest in the negative trend, and this commercial vehicle market is cyclical. So every 5 years, the trend is going up, down, zigzag. So every zag we get in and invest about 50% of the utilization that we see, which we've done the highest over the last 10-year scenarios. So the market is currently standing at 2,000 commercial vehicles per day, which is a 50% share between me and Harish, who's my competitor at Rane, and we are very good friends. We don't take each other as competitors. We don't fight. We share the market absolutely equal, and we call up each other to say this is a new RFQ and let's split it out. Compared to what the industry wants, I am already at about 2,100 commercial vehicle steerings per day between the Pune plant and the Pithampur plant. And we are gearing for this because of the promising feature that we've been reading and listening from Modi ji and Mr. Gadkari about the scrappage policy. I hope it comes within my tenure of leading this company as scrappage policy. I really don't know when it's going to be hitting the market, but let's see. Maybe in this decade, before 2025, I'm hoping that comes up. If it doesn't, I always tell my people, when you see a fat elephant sitting in front of you in the plant, that's when the tireless minds start working to say where we can utilize this capacity and where we can export this to. That is the easier part of the question. So to answer your thing in a percentage, we are at 50% capacity utilization. But because of the pandemic, we are realistically, as what we calculate every Monday, we were at 37%. And your second question was, can you repeat that? I actually forgot on that. Sorry.
Certainly. I just wanted to understand your thoughts on the transition from mechanical to power steering.
So like I mentioned, I mean, I saw this in the worker trend that we have in our plant one, which is our tractor and agriculture equipment plant. And we are very well networked within our ZF India family, employee family strength. And we usually talk to the wives of the employees, because if we do that, then the person never will have the guts to leave our organization, because we have entered his house. So we know what he is thinking, what are his pressure points, what are his stress levels. We also talk on an annual basis with their children. What is their aspiration? What do they want to do? Some of them are doing astronaut courses. Some of them are in engineering. Some of them have gone to Ireland or Greece or UK to study. So it's a great pride for us when these people do that. But the think tank to doing that is, after they finish their education, are they going to be following their father's footsteps like I have? I was fortunate enough to get the seat and know that after 10 years, I will get this industry where I can contribute what I have learned. But if anyone is to learn engineering, spend 5 years, will I have the desire to sit on a tractor and plow my field? So to make the job easier, if I make the equipment in such a way that a field of about 10 acres, which used to take about 11 odd days to plow, now takes only about 2 days with the heavy equipment and the modernization of equipment, then it doesn't feel that bad, right? I think the older generation in India are far more healthier, stronger, and less delicate as compared to us as the current generation. So it becomes a lot more in a perspective way to put it. Once the retirement factor comes in for our workers at the age of 58, they don't mind retiring because they know they have a bright future up to the age of 70 to even work in their fields. And there are many platforms like Mahindra, which is now coming in strongly, or Escorts, which is rent a tractor. So it's Uber tractor. So you have your field, you can call them up, they come with their equipment, they plow it and they can go back. So all these, if I do not venture into the new technology of the power steering platform, then these markets are going to shift, and maybe I'll be the loser at the end of the day, and there is no light at the end of the tunnel. And there is Hydrostatic, there is an Italian player, also a friend, who has entered and taken up a market share. So we said, dosti mein bhi dushmani ka maza alag hi hai. So we always say, okay, you are my friend, I understand. But since you've told me about this product, now I'm going to make sure that I don't come in your way of the patent, but I will develop a Jugaad 4.0, make a new product, kill my own mechanical steering, but also hamper. If an Indian would have set up the plant, I won't be that vicious. But I can't allow an Italian to come out of nowhere and mushroom with a plant and take my market. So we made this product in Khunnas. We developed it within 6 months, and we grabbed 72% market share first month. So it's a retrofitment where I really admire and follow Rajiv Bajaj. And this is a learning from him to say he killed his own scooter segment to develop the motorcycle. Same way, I'm killing my own mechanical steering segment to make my own power steering at half the price to the same customer.
So talking about technology, so your JV partner, Robert Bosch, do you have any technology transfer agreement with the company?
So from 2001 till date, there is no technology between us and them. They're sitting on the board as a commercial investor company, and they are 25.97, and they cannot accord for my sales or profit into their balance sheet because they are less than 27%. So their director sits on our board, but has no voting rights, no powers. Like I said, I love the phenomena or the word nuisance value. So although I am ZF, my collaboration is Bosch. It's my own technology, but look at the hindsight, the upper side. I get every single RFQ across the globe to me being called ZF. So I'm a fight between Kejriwal and Modi. So we are really enjoying this thing, and we will never give up a name because the name ZF India belongs to us. So ZF had to get an NOC from us. So we are enjoying that, but the technology is 100% ours. We don't depend. We don't actually believe in asking for help. We want to be self-reliant.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Neha, your chance, please.
Yeah, thank you, Rachna. I'm Neha Premrajka from Mumbai. So my question is, your company is primarily into auto components. However, we see that you also have multiple renewable energy projects. So what is your thought behind this, sir?
So, they say grass is greener on the other side. So we said, why not invest in another segment which gets us constant income? And honestly, I have no reason to hide, but the renewable sector has far more bottom line than what we do day in and day out. It has 3x profits as compared to auto segment. So my father now at the back seat always tells me to say, "Aap ye banana chhod do." That is, just invest in wind and solar, where we don't have to force the sun to shine or the wind to blow, but we get more money out of it. But the thought behind this is we have a lot of processes within the factory which are highly energy dependent. And India being India, we always have tariff revisions going on, and it world over it goes low, but for the industry it only seems to go up. So we have never understood this, nor have we got any answer from the minister. Minister to kabhi jawab nahi dete, but the bureaucrats, so to say, have said that they need to do it for the common public. So we said we need to be self-reliant. So we invested in about 12 megawatt for our own captive use, because we have heat treatment furnaces and paint shops which need to be running 24/7. It's only Diwali 2 days that we shut, So 360 average days they are on 24/7.
Okay, sir.
Aditi,
Thank you so
followed by
much.
Beena. Beena, you can come in.
So I'm Beena from Bangalore. So are the challenges on the labor side settled for good? And do you see the company moving towards mechanization?
So this is India, and I don't think labor in India can ever be settled. Even if you were to settle it, however, they are always going to come up. We have already moved towards automation, which I would say rather looked at going towards a process-oriented industry and not people-oriented skill set. And the reason I say that is, we all watch movies, but we kind of forget the lines. So you guys have all watched Ghajini, right?
Yes,
That
sir.
Amir Khan movie.
Yes, sir.
In that, when he starts up and he goes into this conference room and he tries to address his people working. So he uses a very good line, which I tell my people all the time and they hate me for it. He quotes, he say, मैं ये कर सकता हूँ, मैं फर्क है, and सिर्फ मैं ये कर सकता हूँ, मैं और भी फर्क है. So what does that imply? मैं ये कर सकता हूँ implies the new age machines with automation that anyone can work on if you know the process of starting the start stop button, all of that. But सिर्फ मैं ये कर सकता हूँ implies the old machines which are lathe and SPM which were there in India, which are labor skill dependent. So that's similarly what happened with us in our company, where we were dependent on this labor for our tractor plant. And they got a feeling that they are so important that we cannot work the company without them. So we've had 3 labor battles till date, and really tough ones, where we've been attacked. I'm sorry to mention that one of our production managers were murdered outside the plant, but this was a big uptime. This is the second incident in India after Maruti.
Yes, sir.
But we decided that we will not come hand in hand with the government. We will fight the government. We'll fight the contractual class and the unions. So we did not allow for any unions to form.
Yes, sir.
After 7 years, we have won the battle. I personally have 964 cases registered against me from the labor union, and I'm fighting them each day. We have a team of about 13 junior advocates, most of them who have failed their thesis, but they are the people who can really think through and pass through all of this. So it's a tough battle, and I always believe I will never pay bribe to anyone. I have not paid bribe in my lifetime of how many years I've worked. If you pay one, there'll be 1,000 standing outside your door.
That's
And
right.
if you keep doing that, then I think it's better that I put up more solar and wind parts than to manufacture auto components. So we've come up a long way, and we are ready for any fight. Now, even after they make a union, they don't come on our gate. They don't dare to come on our gate. And it's not that we have cops. We have one Sukadasa, one watchman standing on the gate, which gives them more complex to say there are 50 of them and there's only one guy who can be beaten up by a child. So it's a tough transition, but our labor thing will never be over, at least for the next 10 years. And I'm happy it's not, because then otherwise, what do I do? I mean, all our people work throughout. I have a lot of issues at home. I mean, I'm married, so I hope you all can understand. I have 2 boys, so they are all with the mothers. So I need something to compensate me with my anger, right? That's the labor. So,
Thank you, sir.
Pooja, for your question, please come in.
Good evening, sir.
I
Sir,
really
the auto industry being cyclical in nature, how are you planning to de-risk yourself?
we've already de-risked. We actually have a risk mitigation plan, which we planned 7 years in advance. So we are calculated up to 2027 already, if not more. although we did not calculate the pandemic, but now we put that into our risk mitigation plan. And we have forayed into markets which are not related to commercial vehicles only and not related to automotive as a whole. We are getting into backward integration because I kind of believe that India is losing out the edge on the low cost working style or the backward integration area, so to say, the forging market or the casting market. If the industry is to be believed and the scrappage policy really comes in, I am 100% sure of what I'm saying, that we will not be able to capitalize on the scrappage policy because we do not have that much of raw material as terms of scrappage available, because it takes a skill and technology to even process the scrap. There is only one company, Mahindra, which has been talking for the last 8 years, and they've not been able to put up a plant yet. So the amount of tonnage you need to process the scrap really depends on the output, what you need to produce. So you're dependent. So we may look at putting up several casting foundries for our own consumption and for the OEMs. We will also de-risk ourselves by employing and putting up training centers for education purpose for people to work on machines. Not only lathes, but SPMs, Industry 4.0, all of this. But this is going to be a part of our CSR, where the government has introduced NEEM, to say, the National Employment Scheme. But there is no focus. And if there would be focus, we would not be in such a bad scenario today. And to elaborate on that, while we are de-risking, something weird is what we have done. When we take about our new portfolio to look at manpower, we give a preference to all the candidates who have failed their exam. We do not take past candidates. Because the idea behind that is, if the person becomes from zero to hero inside my factory, when he applies outside, the first thing they see on his resume is his passing marks. And if he is failed, he does not get an entry. So his confidence is broken, and when he comes back, trust me, for his lifetime, he will not leave the factory, because he knows his value is there inside our factory and not outside. So taking that cue from there, we are going to put up a skill institute, and we will keep rotating them within the new projects that we put up. And the agri field, we are concentrating a lot on the agriculture field, the motors, the pumps, but our endeavor is 50% cost reduction.
Okay. Swati,
Thank you, sir.
we are running out of time. One last question, Swati, and if we have time, then Shweta.
Good evening, sir. So in the recently announced PLI scheme, close to 57,000 crore has been proposed for automobile and auto component sector. So can your company also take advantage of it in a big way, and what are your plans for it?
No, we cannot take advantage of the PLI scheme. Niti Aayog, who has taken the initiative for PLI scheme, the production led incentive, are looking to modify the scheme so that many companies can be put in this and covered. They should actually cover MSME segments because their current perspective of the PLI scheme is a ridiculous thing of turnover should be 1,000 crores, investment should be 500 crores. Global investment should be 150 crores, just to name a few. I think this is illogical. I mean, it cannot come up. But the government has extended the PLI scheme in the proposed GR, so to say, into 13 sectors to integrate the Indian manufacturing ecosystem with the global chain, supply chain value. So if that happens, then we will make use of it.
Thank you so much for your invaluable insights. And now I would like to request Preeti, our Vice President, to give the vote of thanks. Preeti.
Yeah, thank you, Rachna. Wow, sir. Sir, what an insightful session, sir. Thank you, Mr. Manoj, for coming on our platform and giving us some very meaningful inputs, which we as students value so much. Our Auto Ancillary Conclave has become so much more worthwhile by your presence, sir. The key takeaways from today's session are how a labor-intensive industry can grow multifolds when the leader like you is open to technology and automation. You took the brave move of introducing corporate culture in an industry which is so much reliant on traditional work practices. Sir, as Rachna already said, you being a mechanical engineer, a manufacturing engineer, backed by your business administration degree, sir, you brought revolution to this sector. Your supply and apply system is very innovative. Now that you have told us, we know that import substitution, electric vehicles, and power steering tractors are the future of our country, and you are its backbone, sir. I would like to thank Mr. Nair from your company for coordinating this event for us. I also thank our mentors, Mr. Dhanuka, Mr. Bhuwania, and all our beloved members for being present in today's session. I am sure, sir, India will move ahead on the path of growth very smoothly with your power steering, sir, in every car. Thank you so much, sir.
आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर. I hope that happens. But since your kids are not, no one's kids are on the platform, I would be very candid. Whatever I've learned in engineering for 5 years, trust me, not even a single page of that engineering I've put to use. Being very, very honest about it. And I would also like to thank Girish Nair. He is the reason why my marriage is still alive. So he takes half the load of my issues. So I'm quite grateful to him all the time.
Thank you, Utkarsh ji,
you,
very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.